Welcome back to the Brave Bitches podcast. Hi, Daisy. Thanks for being here and chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I was so psyched about being invited to your show, and I can't wait for all the goodies that we're going to share with each other.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited that you said yes when I asked you. I have gotten to know you a little bit because you've been friends with Justin, my husband, for years. But now recently we've gotten to hang out a couple times in your hometown and then also in Nicaragua, which was actually like a fun little surprise to have someone come and see us, a familiar face in a foreign country. But I'm excited that today we get to chat just us two, and hopefully I get to know you a little bit and get to know your story a little bit more. I know already you are a fascinating, intelligent human being, and so I know that there's like so much for us to dive into.
Same.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm stoked if we just like wanted to like get going quickly. If you were to just introduce yourself to anyone in like a few sentences, how would you introduce yourself and like what are you passionate about?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it is.
Who am I?
Yeah. Who is Daisy?
Yeah, so I guess, first of all, like, I think I'm just a normal human being, just like everyone else with all these, like, sensitivities, flaws, vulnerabilities, experiences, desires, like any of you. And I feel like, a lot of times, I think before 2 years, I had like a turning point in my life where I got very sick. But before that, I always used to just like introduce myself as the therapist because I feel like that's what I have got to offer to the world the most from my therapist role. So yeah, sort of like, I'm like a trauma therapist, relation therapist. I do intimacy coaching with individuals and couples as well. I am also a yoga teacher, meditation teacher. So those are kind of like the professional things where I could be in service to other people. But then, after this whole journey of being sick chronically, I feel like, wow, I just really wanted to offer myself as a human being and for anyone to connect with me in whatever capacity they have and they desire to, really want to share that part of myself to everyone now.
I love that. I feel like that's the best way to connect and create intimacy as well, is just being like, this is me. I'm a little bit messy. I'm a little bit imperfect. I stumble, I struggle, and this is me, and I love me, and this is where I'm at. And I feel like that's where humans find that connection and that intimacy is when we're willing to admit that we have both the light and the dark and not just, our professional titles or our relationship status or any of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was interesting to be in this spot where I had to be, seeking help constantly in the past 2 years, and definitely humbled me from this place where, hey, there are still a lot of connections available, even when, I'm at this sort of most vulnerable and sick state where I feel like I have nothing to offer, like professionally or even capacity wise a lot of times, and yet there are still these amazing connections happening from these people who just want to connect with me without wanting anything from me, and that was like really mind-blowing to me.
That's cool.
For the first time.
What was that like for you to kind of go from that service role of being such a giver and give to having to ask for help? How was that transition?
It was extremely hard, but it's not like I have trouble asking for help. I think what brought me onto the therapy path to become a therapist myself was the fact that I got clinically depressed when I was a freshman in university, and I had to go on a whole healing journey for myself with therapists, with psychologists, who then told me or shine light on the importance of mental health and on human emotions, the messy parts as well. That really changed my perspective on what I can do with my own gifts, my own personality as more emotional than just purely logical at that point. So it's like I had that experience, like almost 2 decades ago now. But it wasn't as sort of completely helpless as I have been in the past 2 years, where my physical health just deteriorated. That was really new to me, and that was so scary. Yeah, and I had to go on medical leave for the past 2 years. I was seeing very limited number of long-term clients during that time, and I was very vulnerable to share with others that, hey, I can't really be there for you right now because I really need all the remaining energy back to myself. I need to be taken care of, essentially. And that was, pretty, it felt pretty humiliating at first because I have been in that role to support other people's healing all this time. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So you first became a therapist because you experienced change and help from that field. And you were like, wow, is this something that I can possibly do? And you were able to do that. So then maybe the transition was a little bit more smooth with asking for help, only because you're like, I've experienced already how beneficial it is to ask for help and to be vulnerable in that situation. But I'm curious for if you were to like give advice to anyone that feels like it's a struggle to ask for help or to reach out to like professionals in vulnerable situations, what would you encourage them?
That whatever you're feeling right now is so normal and is not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong, and the first thing you can do to start helping yourself is to acknowledge that it's okay to feel this way, and it's okay for other people wanting to be there to support you. Like maybe just to like acknowledge that there are people who genuinely would be honored to support you right now, exactly where you are at, even if you're like so feeling like you're so completely all over the place and you really don't really know what could possibly be helpful to you in this moment. It's still okay to show up in social situations and ask for help and be seen that way, that there are people who are going to be feeling so honored to be there for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So realize basically accepting where you're at and giving permission for that messiness, even if you have no idea if there's any sort of solution or there's any sort of way out. But it is such a gift to give, right? And so when you ask for help, you're essentially allowing people to be able to give to you. And that feeds and is a gift to that person that gets the opportunity to do that, right? And I think that it's easy to forget that when we're the ones asking for help. Especially, I mean, I feel like for those that struggle the most with asking for help, it tends to be the people that are most willing to give it. And yet we forget how much we enjoy doing that, what a gift it is to do that. And but it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to ask and to admit that you need someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you remarked the fact that we would be giving others a gift of connecting with us, a gift of offering themselves to us and feel good about being there for us. And it's not every day that we get to share this gift with other people. And a lot of times we feel more comfortable to sort of be there to help others and not the other way around. So, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's where intimacy comes in, right? And if we're just always in showing one side of us, our good side or our healthy side, then it's basically, essentially, the others that we're connecting with are missing a huge chunk of who you are or a huge experience of your life, right? I'm curious for you, like, as someone who's worked in like intimacy, specifically like sexuality intimacy, how do you feel that that ties into that, like being vulnerable, showing your dark side? Like, how does that tie into like sexual intimacy, or does it at all?
So much, so much of it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think physical intimacy, sexual intimacy is one of those things we get to really offer all of ourselves with another human being and come together and experience that, the depth of that connection in unison with each other is just one of the most beautiful experiences I think we could have as humans. And at the same time, I think it does also bring a lot of vulnerabilities towards sharing with each other. You know, starting from like the fact that we're getting naked with each other and letting another
Totally.
person to see us for who we are in our
Yeah.
birthday suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and beyond just the the, the physical appearance side of things, like how we react in intimacy, our little quirks and desires and reactions, impulses, our threshold for pleasure and pain and preferences, all of these are being revealed in the bedroom, and that can feel extremely vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we want to show off to just perform for each other, as we have, so often learned from media or from sort of stories of how sex is supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially in long-term relationships as well. That we just expect everything to go out just hot and great and never change. Yet in
Mm-hmm.
reality, it changes all the time, and
Totally.
we can't just keep the honeymoon phase, the dating highs there for a long term. Um, so yeah, there's just a lot of, I think, real human aspects of ourselves that gets to be exposed in intimacy with one another, and we have these feelings that come up, and how do we communicate, express these feelings as they come up in these intimate interactions with each other. So it ties back into the question of yeah, like showing vulnerability and asking for support, asking for what we want, what we need in
Mm-hmm.
these intimate scenarios. I think has a lot to do with how we also bring ourselves in just general social situations, kind of like kind of like feeling more comfortable to hide these very real aspects of ourselves in order to please the other person, in order to keep that relationship going, that good vibe going, instead of
Mm-hmm.
just sharing how we honestly feel, especially when that feeling isn't all positive. It might
Mm.
bring, feelings of disappointment, shame, insecurities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you feel like the patterns of kind of how you are interacting with people in your regular day-to-day life, whether that's at work, family relationships, friendships, you're going to see like a more heightened version of that in a sexual
Mm,
relationship.
possibly,
Hmm.
if they were
Okay.
to express that part in themselves. I think we could probably feel that. But a lot of times I think it's hard to actually communicate these things, even when we feel it. We
Yeah.
might err on the side of not opening up this can of worms.
Hmm. Yeah. How do you recommend someone starts that? So, say you feel like you've been in a very performative sexual relationship, or
Mm,
you have kind of been fulfilling a role, right, for a certain period of time. And I feel like, especially in a long term relationship, it gets really tricky to communicate and to go back into that like check in with yourself, right? So, do you have any recommendations on how someone can go about that and kind of re get in touch with themselves and their like true vulnerability?
yeah, yeah. I think it depends on how they approach their sexual relationship with their partner first. If they were to go in focusing on only one aspect of it because that one aspect will please their partner, let's say, that already sort of sets the expectation to go in fulfilling a role in a way. I would say maybe slow it down. Slow down is in feeling into what's actually alive for you in this moment, erotically. What do you actually desire to bring in this connection with your partner? What do you desire to feel in yourself foremost? Is that something that has to do with really interacting with your partner, or is that something that you also want to maybe explore first with yourself? How do you find the most juicy sexual energy within yourself? Can you meet that by yourself in every day, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of yourself sexually? Can you be mindful of how you are cultivating that sexual energy for yourself? What does that even look like? Is that something more sensual that you're wanting to really experience more of yourself and then give to yourself, and therefore maybe wanting more of that in your sexual relationship with your partner? And is that being met? Are you actively asking that from your partner? Do you talk about whether this is something that they're into as well? And if not, is there a way for you to discuss how to make that meet in this relationship? I think those are, yes, first, like some of the questions I'd be interested to explore with that person by themselves. Like, what do you actually want? And and then inviting the partner to also share the same before delving into the actual dynamic of what is performative versus what's authentic and connecting.
That makes sense. So breaking out of the routine a little bit and spending time actually contemplating what you want or what you need, and allowing your partner to do so as well, and then being able to communicate that with each other, right?
Yeah.
I heard you say cultivating sexual energy, and I'm curious for you, like outside of, say, the sexual acts themselves, whether that's with a partner or on your own, how do you cultivate or maintain that sexual energy throughout your days?
Yeah. I want to like pick your brain a bit about that too, because I know you're also a
Okay.
relationship and maybe
I know.
intimacy
I'm
coach.
curious to hear your mind too, though. This is so interesting.
I know. Let's talk about it together, because
Okay.
when you ask me that question, my immediate thought is like to me, I feel like you and Justin are, like have so much arrows in your relationship because you individually are feeding that for yourself. I don't know, like, does that statement land for you?
Yeah. Well, at first, I want to hear what your definition of eros is, because that's kind
Okay.
of been, I feel like that's a hot button word, right? But like, what's your definition of that?
Okay. I'm not very good with like defining things that are very so
Just
important
spitball
and
it.
so essential. Okay. I feel like arrows are not just coming from like sexual acts itself or even sexual feelings per se. I feel like arrows is the essence of life, the essence of feeling that aliveliness in this world. And feeling alive to me is like this connection you have with yourself, with the world, with other people, with things that are happening to you in every moment to moment experience. When you feel so energized by having this interaction you have with, say, a person or with some activity you're doing, or even with yourself in that moment of stillness or movement, you feel there is this connection that makes you just feel really, really alive,
Yeah, I love
full of
that.
energy to share.
That's such a great description, because I have heard eros described in many ways, but I love that feeling of aliveness, connection. I would say, like, essentially, I mean, that's what eros means, is love, right? But it's that feeling of we are one, we're connected, we feel, we feed each other, right? There's vibrancy when there's connection. And yeah, I definitely feel like I'm very thankful in my relationship because Jess and I so prioritize our connection, and just like anybody, there's ebbs and flows, right? But something that we are so consistent on is spending time together. And so like we have a weekly holiday, we call it, or we call each other Doobie because we just like silly names. But so once
I
a
love
week we
it.
have, yeah. So once a week we have Doobie Day. And this
Uh-huh.
is like sacred, sacred, sacred. We do not make any plans with anybody. We don't work on that day. We try to like put our phones to the side, and really like our only intention of the day is just to spend time together. And sometimes we're doing really simple stuff like sitting on the couch watching a movie together, or sometimes we're out doing adventurous things and exploring or surfing or doing something, right? But it's just so important. I feel like is literally the lifeblood of our relationship is that like weekly day that is so sacred. And it's to the point where it's like someone's like, hey, will you go do this thing with me on this day? And like it's a free ticket or something. I'm like, no, I can't. Like this is important. That's my doobie day. And all my friends know that. I'll be like, sorry, can't hang out. It's doobie day. Or like I had my friend text me on Sunday last week, and when I didn't respond, she sent me a text a couple hours later and was like, oh, I forgot it was doobie day. Like, I'll hear from you tomorrow. So it's just like, even the people in my life know about that. And yeah, I feel like that's really the main thing. But also another thing is we are both very communicative people. And so that's such a huge aspect of our relationship is even when we're hitting really rough points or things where we're not really aligning together, we're not lying about it to each other. We're not pretending like something's not there. It's a conversation, and it's probably many conversations. And we're willing to like embrace the uncomfortable or the argument if need be, or the, whatever it is, as long as it's getting faced. Both of us are like that. We don't want any of that nasty energy just sitting there, that stagnant thing. So yeah, that's like my biggest advice when I give people ways to come back in their relationship is like find a sacred time every week. It doesn't have to be a full day. For us, we have that flexibility. We don't have kids. We don't have like, other things that are adding pressure. And so we're able to create a whole day, but even just 2 hours, even just some evening a week, yeah, is so sacred. And that connection is so
Yeah.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that you're dedicated to creating quality time with each other, especially like in this long-term relationship, and also committed to talking about things that are uncomfortable, even if it were to instill fights and conflicts, and you're not afraid to talk about it with each other and work things out. I find that really admirable.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I mean, it's taken work. We weren't at the beginning of our relationship. I think we argued a lot more than we needed to. So now I feel like we've gotten to a good point where we found a good, like, safe ground where arguments are accepted and discontentment or disagreeing with things is allowed, but we're not outletting our just anger on each other just to do so. But that was definitely the experience for us in like the earlier parts of our relationship was just like pew pew pew. We were we would just go at each other sometimes, and like yeah, so yeah, I feel like every relationship has to find their own systems, right? Their own things that work for them too. And it's maybe not going to look like every other relationship or the relationships they've seen in their life, but as long as it works for you and your partner, then I mean, you're the only ones in that partnership, so you should be the only ones that are considered, and how you find your systems, how you communicate, and yeah, not everyone would want to argue as much as we do, but it works for us. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I also think that, and you can let me know if it's I'm missing the spot here or not. I also find that when I mentioned I feel like you have a lot of arrows in your relationship, it's also because I know Justin who's a very passionate person. He's like very into all of
Understatement.
the understatement. Yeah,
Yes.
so he's got like all these things he's super passionate about, and then you on the other hand are also like you have your own passion,
Mm-hmm.
and I see that like by watching your Instagrams, like the all the journeys that you've done together or individually, I definitely see like two very yeah, passionate individuals
Mm-hmm.
coming to each other, bringing all of your each of your own distinct gifts and passions to share with each other. And I feel like there's just a lot of like of that sharing and feeding this relationship with all these different things that make up who you are and make this relationship really complementary to each other. And
Mm-hmm.
including I saw that you have done a training in Bali
Mm-hmm.
where you married your own desire, if I remember
Yes.
it
Yeah,
correctly.
exactly.
I am
Uh-huh.
so curious about it, and like I'm wondering, what did you take away from that training, and how did that impact you as a person, as a coach now, and how did
Mm-hmm.
that impact your relationship with Justin too?
Oh, so much. I appreciate your reflection, by the way. And I would agree. I think maybe that's why having that weekly thing is so sacred because we live such independent lives, even though we live together. Like he's always doing his thing, I'm doing my thing, and we're just willing to go do our thing all most days, right? And so that's why we create that sacred day because if we don't, we would just go like this, right? Instead we go like
Yeah,
this. And
yeah,
so
yeah. Yeah, the
but
fact
yeah,
that he was hammering things away while you're like doing your podcast.
yes. He's doing it right now actually. He's right over
I
there
know, I could
working.
hear it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that's it. Or he'll be like recording a YouTube channel and I'm like editing an episode or I'm doing something. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, or we have like our own interests as well. Like, so that's such a fun part. That's such a valued thing I have. And I knew I needed this in a long term partnership is the ability to be free in my own self and have my own independence. Cause I've been in relationships, right, where if I'm not there or I'm doing my own thing, they're like waiting on me, or there's this expectation that, oh no, you're going to hang out with friends tonight. Okay, well, then that means you have to hang out with me tomorrow night or something. And there was just this like expectation placed on me where I felt like I didn't have the freedom to go and do what I love to do or just have fun, or have a partner that was solid in themselves, right? That has their own passions and their own hobbies,
Mm-hmm.
and like that's so sexy and such an attractive quality in a partner. Like for me to look at Justin and see that he's passionate about what he does and that he's willing to like put his whole heart and soul into it. And I'm not the center of his universe because I don't really want to be the center of his universe. I want to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of his universe, but I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be the focus, right? Because that gets real old real quickly, and that's when I think you get those like, trying to change each other kind of dynamics. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love being able to create and have our own things and then be able to be like, hell yeah, and encourage each other in those things as well. So yeah, when I went to Bali, he was hugely encouraging of me going to Bali. I actually got a scholarship to go to this retreat, and
Mm-hmm.
I had was like, okay, I just have to book a flight and go. And I was like, should I do it? Should I not? We were kind of in like a up in the air place financially at the time, but then it was like, all right, you have to do this. And he was like, I got your back. And so
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going, and I am so thankful for that experience. There were so many ripple effects from that time. Basically, that entire year in and of itself was a very healing year for me. We went to Nepal at the beginning of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I embraced a lot of like my religious trauma because I was raised as a Christian, very deeply ingrained. And so I embraced a lot of my religious trauma and like worked through my anger and letting go of those things. And then Bali for me felt like this experience where I was able to like start fresh again of building my new blocks after like
Mm-hmm.
stripping everything off and feeling very raw and open and unknown about everything. That week felt like this opportunity to explore like what we were talking about earlier. What do I want? Who am
Mm-hmm.
I? What do I actually want to create in my life? And what kind of relationships do I want to hold? How do I want to be in my relationships with my parents or with my friends or with my my partner, right? And so yeah, that was a heavy week. I cried so much that week. But also that's how I process things. I'm a crier. Yeah, I feel any sort of emotion, it's gonna come out as tears. But yeah, that's also where I first kind of your experience, like with experiencing therapy and having that be such a gift for you, it made you evaluate, is this something that I want to do? It was that experience for me, having these coaches stand by my side and like love on me and like walking me through the fire as I'm just like processing all these like past things. I was like, this is so powerful, and I feel so loved here. Like I want to be able to create these spaces for others as well. And that is literally why I'm now doing women's events now, and like why I'm a coach, and all of that has rippled to where I am now. Basically from that one week, it was like life-changing and powerful. And yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that is such a beautiful journey. And I remember from listening to your very first podcast that you shared a bit about this, working through your own religious trauma and leaving your community and all that. It was deeply moving when I heard that story, and that was a part of you that I didn't know until I listened to your podcast. And I feel like there are so many people. Of course. I want to like get to know, like what your podcast is about before I get on here. And I was so glad that I got to know that piece about you. And I know that for a fact that there are just so many people out there who had your experience growing up, and some of them are still like sort of stuck in that place of not sure whether they could let go of that big part of their life in pursuit of this individuality that doesn't necessarily fit in with that expectation from that religious community. And I feel so so in awe for your courage, deciding to move away in pursuit of embracing this part of you that you're discovering, and going all the way to Bali, and to first of all to Nepal and to Bali, and now becoming a nomad, and just so incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a story I hear from a lot of others that I've connected with as well. I think that there's something about the energy I'm putting out as well, because I meet so many people that have left the church, or even people that are still involved in the church but have like had to reject it for some time and then recreate what it was going to look like for them. And because it's one of those things where you're really dropping every part of your life at once. And that's just a wild experience to drop all your beliefs, drop all your relationships, your community, your sense of self, your destiny, your like just all the pieces that I feel like you kind of create in your own mind to decide who you are. And when you leave a religion, you have to drop everything. And it's a vulnerable place to be in. And but it's not a solo experience. There's so many people that I've met that have experienced the same thing.
Because I'm imagining like growing up in a religious community, like spirituality and social support were your safety net. You were born into that safety net, and there's like attachment that is built into this specific way of you, and you being spiritual in this specific way in that community, and having to walk away from it is not just like walking away from your family, but walking away from this entirety of how you felt safe in this world.
Exactly. And then it's tough when you leave a situation like that. I felt, and I know a lot of others feel this way, I felt all this anger towards those people for the pain I felt, even though now I look at it and I see that these were choices I made, and they were choices I made based on the information I had at the time, right? And so I made these choices for my life, but it's so easy to feel pain or feel like this kind of ripping of the Band-Aid, right? And then want to just turn and just reject everyone and spew out all your hate and anger towards people, right? And that worked as a safety net for me for a short time, right? It felt good. I felt strong. Okay. I'm angry, and it's better than feeling at the mercy of someone, right? But that just is not sustainable. Holding anger and holding all that, right? That's when you start to feel that stuff physically manifest in your body as well, right? To bring this
Yeah.
back to you, actually, I know that you do somatic work, right? Or that's at least what your title was on your Instagram, tied with your therapy. What does that mean for you? Because I know somatic, the way that I've understood it is like a whole body experience, right? Like in allowing the physical, how it connects in with the mental and all of that. So for you, how do you define somatic therapy?
Yeah. Somatic therapy is a pretty broad term. It's kind of like the third wave of psychology. We kind of
Yeah, it's a
first
pretty
moved.
hot word right now, right?
Yes, it's a buzzword for sure. So like anyone who includes or involves some kind of awareness to be focused on our body can call themselves a somatic therapist, person,
Okay.
worker, But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it's pretty general. The way that I've been trained, so I did my 2 year long somatic attachment therapy training with Dr. Lisa Mortimer. She lives in Victoria, BC. She does very in-depth work bringing the body into consciousness. So we sort of in a way, like in traditional therapy, there's a lot of talk involved. And same as like in my way of working somatically, there's definitely talking involved. But the way we talk is always trying to give voice to our body. We're not so much so focused on the narratives of what's happening that
Okay.
is distressful to us, that's traumatic. We consciously bring the narrative downwards and embody that experience by exploring what sensations are present right now, what impulses or defense mechanisms that are happening that are still unconscious to the mind, but it is pretty obvious in the body because of the way there are sensations showing up, there are movement, there are these like holding backs that are that can be detected when we work with the clients somatically by focusing on their body language, by focusing on sort of what is happening in their body, or what is not happening in the body, and we bring that awareness constantly back to things that are in the present. So there's a lot of mindfulness involved as well, because a lot of times when we talk about our stories, it's always almost happening in the past, or we talk about how we are afraid of things happening in the future. So we're kind of stuck in between the swings of past versus future, but we don't have any agency to do anything about it. So part of
That's
the
true. Yeah.
yeah, the empowerment that somatic therapy brings to us is that we can start to do something about this thing right now by bringing our body into the conversation, by trying to actually process what's happening here and release it, move through it, or expand it. There are maybe narratives that we are talking about, but then there are voices that are still unheard. So by moving into our body, sometimes we could release things that has been suppressed or repressed, even like forgotten, in the safety of the therapeutic relationship that is. Because a lot of these trauma, a lot of these pain or distress happen when we didn't have enough resource in ourselves, and it's not our fault if we haven't had enough resource, say, knowing how to emotionally regulate ourselves. That's mostly because we haven't been shown the way to do it by ourselves, by people who took care of us, who were supposed to have a stronger, more grounded nervous system than us, yet they couldn't contain our distress at a young age. They couldn't contain our hurt, They couldn't help us with our trauma because they had a lot of reactions in their own body that they were unaware of. So that kind of disconnect with their bodies has been passed down, kind of across generationally speaking. And then that results in a disconnect in our own body right now. So somatic therapy is really about bridging that disconnect from the mind to the body, give power back to the body, so that we can actually do something about these feelings, these sensations, these defense mechanisms, and dysregulations that has been stuck in our nervous system, in our body for this whole time. And we do this by being in relationship with each other, having the safety, having the security, having the guidance to hold this experience together.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing. I feel like I'm glad that there's been more conversations about somatic therapy or like coming back to the body, because I think we're realizing that so much more of our physical, reactions and experiences are triggered by our thoughts, our emotions, right? And when we can connect the two instead of pretending like everything is so separate, which I think maybe that's been the perspective for a long time, and maybe this new kind of wave of therapy that is allowing us to see that we're all so tied in together. And if we can give attention or focus to one, then we can probably have impact on all of them, right? I'm curious for you, like, what do you think about things like breath work and yoga and those things as tools for like somatic therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. They're somatic in nature, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I was trained as a somatic therapist, I was doing yoga. So I had a decade-long history in practicing yoga and ultimately getting trained to become a yoga teacher. Getting trained to become a yoga teacher, and that transformed my life completely. Same as therapy itself. I think I met my first therapist around the same time I met, actually right after I started doing yoga. So I started doing yoga when I was 17, and then I met my first therapist when I was 18. And I think those two really went hand in hand together, but at the time I didn't know that they were just really all connected together.
Yeah.
In terms of helping us to heal, helping us to grow, and have these profound transformational potentials to offer. But as I deepened into my yoga practice over the years and meditation, I felt like I was just a different person. A lot of my own reactivities as a teenager and young adult, it just sort of melted away the more I practiced. Yeah, and usually in group settings at the time. This was way before COVID. So the community and making friends with other students and other teachers was so helpful to deepen my relationship with myself and with yoga and meditation. I don't think I could have done it if I were just to have practiced online, let's say. And then I think there's some resonance with what you're saying, when you went to Bali. I imagine that was also really healing because it was in a group with other women. Absolutely. With other coaches. Yeah, and there are in-depth work you've done, on your own, but it also happened in that community, in that group where everyone held the same value for your personal growth, healing, and tapping into your truth. I think the same thing was happening on a more subtle level in yoga classrooms or studios, where we all came in, in one way or another, wounded, lost, and were at least curious about how we can, be better in showing up for our lives, for ourselves. So I think that sort of collective consciousness was there, and we sort of just really encouraged each other, really challenged each other to go deep into that work. So yeah, I feel I feel pretty good as a therapist in terms of my ability and capacity to support others, I attribute that hugely to my yoga practice, to the experiences I have been gifted by my teachers, by my fellow students and friends, and those 10 years or so I spent in yoga studio, dedicated daily to that practice. I feel there's a lot of humility that brought to me, to feel like we're all really the same. We are all in this together, just trying our best to show up and trying to find whatever ways possible to bring tangible skills to our day-to-day life, so we can be sane in this mad life.
Yeah, it's so true. I know, I think the more that you spend in community, and specifically learning in community, you start to realize, wow, we're really not that different from each other. We all desire such similar things. And I mean, even if you look at just religions across the world, right? They're all different, but you see those same core things. And the number one core thing I feel like I see in all the religions is community. There's, church, or there's monasteries, or there's in yoga, there's yoga classes, but always that same core thing, which is we need each other. And learning and growing as a human being is so much more impactful, I think, on ourselves when we do it in community, and we can learn from each other. We can see someone, see them stumble or see them struggle, get to help them, help lift them up, stand for them. And then when it's your turn to stumble and struggle, right, to have those people there that can lift you up and stand for you as well, is really something that can't be replaced, I think, by anything else in our life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel it's especially true for like my cultural background is China, like East Asian. So I grew up in China. I was born and raised in Beijing, China, and I moved to Canada when I was about 11, 12 years old. My culture was a collective culture, like most Asian countries, but it's very anti-religion. There's actually, about what they did to Tibet, and it's a lot of oppression, a lot of negativity actively thrown at any attempt to have a spiritual practice. I don't know how it is nowadays, because I left when I was younger, but most of my Asian clients, they come to me not having had any encouragement to practice spirituality until they are now in a very different country and there are freedom to explore your own spirituality or religion. And I remember my dad was like very concerned when he started to see me so into yoga, and I was trained in Reiki as well, so he thought I was doing some dark magic sort of things, and was very concerned about it ruining my profession. And then I had to explain to him the difference between religion and spirituality, and how important it is for me to grow into my own person. And I am a deeply spiritual person to begin with, and he had a lot of trouble understanding that, and because of the upbringing he had growing up in China as well. So because of that, I think spirituality is a very sensitive and foreign topic for a lot of Asian people like me. However, when I left China, left my extended family and my friends who were my social support growing up, it was extremely isolating and alienating. Growing up in a completely different cultural value. As a teenager, I felt like an outcast most of the time, and I think without that sense of community, without any sort of spiritual practice, one can easily derail into feeling like we're not good enough for the world. That we need to change, we need to fix ourselves in order to fit in, to have some sense of belonging. I think that period of my life was pretty dark, like in my junior high and high school years, combined with like family issues growing up. So yeah, eventually it led me to become pretty depressed in freshman year. And sort of after that experience, I had the opportunity to go study in Japan. I had received a scholarship, and that's where I met Justin when I was 19.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, he was like, I don't know, 20 or 21 at the time. So yeah, and that was like literally the first time since I left China when I first started to feel a sense of community, and it was so healing. That half a year that I spent in Japan, finding international students who became my friends, Japanese students who were, yeah, like so eager to help me feel at home. It was incredible. Even though like we had a huge language barrier, I went at the time when I didn't really speak a word of Japanese, but I quickly was able to make friends even though we didn't, like verbally communicate as well, but there were like the body language and the emotional tune and the actions we were conveying to each other that hey, we wanna connect, and we did. It was
That's so
just
cool.
yeah, one of the like best period of my life, I have to say.
That's so cool. Justin talks about Japan so fondly too, and the experiences he had, and he shares some funny experiences too of like not speaking Japanese and oh my gosh, that construction. Do you hear that construction?
I
That's
hear it.
wild. Why are they doing it right now? I hate them.
Why is he doing it right now?
This is horrible. Shut up. I keep muting the mic while you were talking because I didn't want it to like sound while you were going. But yeah, anyways. But yeah, Justin talks so fondly of Japan and just the connections he made with people. And yeah, he says the same thing that there was, not being able to speak the language at first, but still finding ways to like connect and make friendships and, um, you know, go do karaoke or do different things like that. That you're like, we'll figure this out somehow. We're communicating halfway here. Um, and yeah, so I think that's such a cool. I feel like it's an experience that I think people should experience at least once in their life, which is to live in a foreign country. Um, just because that again back to like that vulnerability, that willingness to learn as well, and being placed in such a uncomfortable situation and enduring, I think is it applies lessons across all aspects of life. And I mean, and I've lived for short periods of times in places outside of my country, but it wasn't until now where I'm really living like months at a time in a new country, where I'm like experiencing that language barrier, experiencing the the similarities between my culture and theirs, but then also the vast differences as well. And it's such a gift. It's such a yeah, I want to like gift that to everybody and say, go live
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. I mean, I know we
Mm-hmm.
don't all have that ability to do that, but to be able to do that is just such a rewarding experience.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, especially like there are, at least I took advantage of my school's exchange programs. I was able to go to Japan twice during my undergrad, and I know
Nice.
that there were a lot of different country options for people who wants to have that language and culture exchange. Absolutely take advantage of that. If you're listening to this podcast, you're still in school, go apply, study abroad. It
Yes,
will be the
go.
best decision you ever make.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Or even like the we're doing it now, and yeah, it's trickier than having a system where school can like set you up and be able to have a place to stay and an education. But it's so much more affordable to live outside the country, outside of this
Mm,
US at least, and probably Canada as well, because Canada is similar. Um, and yeah, like living here, it's like you just have to be willing to sacrifice some things, but um, there's so many more rewards versus the sacrifices that it's just I can't even recommend it enough. Oh my goodness, now they're sawing stuff. together. Did you not recording a podcast right now? Come on.
Seriously. Where's that mindfulness now?
I know. I need to come back to myself and be mindful. Create patience, right? Because this is crazy.
It's okay if you want to just go over there and yell at him. I'm totally for it.
Yeah, just go yell at them. They're like, who's this little white girl down there yelling at me? I'm just trying to build this house. Yeah, I don't know what's going on up there, but anyways. Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like we've had such a lovely conversation. This has been so great to get to know you, Daisy. I feel like this is even better than I could have predicted, getting to hear from your heart and your mind and get to hear a little bit of my story as well, which is always special to have that exchange, get to know each other. So I'm really thankful. I'm really glad you got to be here today. Do you mind if I transition into our rapid fire questions?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, let's freaking do it. All right. If you were to recommend 3 books, movies, or podcasts to whoever's listening, what would you recommend?
Okay. Oh, that's like hard to boil down. I have so many resources I want to offer, but I mean, I'll just offer something that I really like listening to these days. I am a big fan of Layla Martin. I've been following her for like 8 years at least.
Oh, she's the sex coach, right?
Yeah, she's more than a coach. She's a master teacher, I would call her.
Okay.
She offers tantra and intimacy coaching programs called the Vita programs, which I seriously considered enrolling myself in. But ultimately I chose to go with another coaching institute, which is what I'm doing right now. But her podcast is like brilliant and funny and so informative and empowering. I would definitely recommend if you are someone who is sort of interested in exploring your sexuality, exploring how to, going back to your question, how to cultivate more of that erotic energy in yourself and bringing it back to your relationships. She would be my number 1 recommendation for that to learn from. Yeah, Layla Martin, her podcast is called This is Tantric Life on Spotify or Apple. Yeah. And then awesome. Books, there are just so many, and I love not self-help books, but like books that are inspiring for us to go on our own healing journeys. I read a lot about Osho. He was a meditation teacher, a prolific speaker on all subjects about spirituality. So if you're interested, you can look up him. He just has anything he says is like can be quoted. It's like very very.
How do you spell that?
Good. Osho, Osho.
Okay, cool. I'll link this stuff too below in the description for anyone that's interested in as well.
Sure. And then another book recommendation is around attachment, which is also a huge part of what I do. My somatic therapy is not just like focusing on body, but focusing on attachment styles as well, which is sort of like our intimate relationship patterning. So the book I recommend is called The Power of Attachment by Diane Kohler. That would be a really good book to read. Another one related to this work, especially for couples, is by Dr. Sue Johnson. She was a psychotherapist as well, and public speaker and author. Her book, one of the earlier book called Hold Me Tight, I recommend all my couple clients to read, which is a wonderful resource.
That's
I
cool.
recommend
I love that.
Also, Justin's
Keep going, girl.
Monastery.
Oh yeah.
I love that little story that he wrote. It's like totally like alchemist vibe, and I recommend that to everyone as well.
It's fantastic. I agree. This is the second shout out in a podcast episode, actually, so which is great.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing those. I appreciate that. Again, I will link those all below. So if anyone's interested in looking those up and reading them, I'm going to as well look it up. So I
Mm-hmm,
appreciate that.
mm-hmm.
Okay, what is a superpower that you wish that you had?
Oh gosh, I really wish I could fly or teleport to anywhere.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
then,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I think that would save a lot of travel costs and yeah, be able to go visit more places and meet more people that way. And also the superpower of not having jet lag when I do that.
Yes. Your body just adjusts no matter what the time zone is. You're just like set to go. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Okay. What is a comfort meal for you?
I'm a sweet tooth, so like any dessert would really comfort me in times of stress. Not the super sugary ones, like we Asians like our dessert not too sweet.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
with
know
you
if
on that too.
yeah, like matcha desserts with red
Mm.
beans and stuff. I love pudding, like, but not just any pudding, not the American puddings, the Japanese pudding. Like, Justin would know what I'm talking about. Like, you can get it from
Okay.
those convenience stores for like $1 each, and they're just the most amazing texture of flan, of custard. They taste like creme brulee. Um, just
That sounds
amazing.
great. Love that. Okay, awesome. And then last question I have for you is why do you think it's important in your own life to be brave?
It's a really good question. I think it's important for us to be brave so we could grow, we could learn to step outside of our comfort zone and get into the real world of relationships, the real world of going to new places and adapting to those new challenges and changes to keep on building our own sense of resiliency, to show ourselves how like badass we are, how powerful we are, that we can do things that we desire and at the same time make differences in the world. Maybe like a difference in like being in a relationship and you make another human being feel so loved because you are brave enough to be vulnerable with them and have this real relationship with them. Maybe that difference means that you speak against the mainstream about your own ideologies of how this world would be better. Maybe it means that you are fighting for social justice, for you're speaking on behalf of people's voice who are silenced or who doesn't have the privilege to speak as you can. So there are just so many great things that can happen when you are brave for yourself and for the sake of others.
That's so beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, Daisy. That was so great. I love that share. Before I
Yeah,
let
thank you
you
for that question
go,
too. That was such a good
yeah,
question.
absolutely. So good, so good. Before I let you go, though, is there anywhere where people can go to support your work or connect with you or anything you'd like to share?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can easily find me on my website, daisybycounseling.ca, or my intimacy coaching website is called moonblossom.ca, all of which you can find from my Instagram account. You can link it to your viewers, listeners. It's just Daisy underscore tea time.
Hmm. Perfect. Yes, I will link your website and your Instagram and everything down below too, so anyone can explore that and check it out. But Daisy, thank
Great.
you again so much.
Thank you
This was
so
so good
much.
to connect with you and have this conversation. This feels like such a gift, and I'm honored that we got to do this today. So thank you
I
again.
know, and I hope that we can continue our chats
Hmm.
when I see you in Peru. I hope I can go
Yes.
visit you maybe in Cusco, or if you guys feel called for, come down to Iquitos and meet us up when we
Hmm.
do our ayahuasca ceremonies.
Okay, cool. Yes, we're going to definitely stay connected. So this is awesome. Well, so much love. Mwah.
Awesome. See you.
Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode of the Brave Bitches podcast. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, share, review, all that good stuff. Also follow me on Instagram at Hannah Soul Marie or at Brave Bitches Without the I for some behind the scenes look and clips from the episode. Again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. That's going to be the one.